Here's part 4 of our conversation with the great Bill Champlin. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music.
First impression of him, and how did you meet him? What was your first thought?
The Sons were doing a record with Keith Olsen, a record called Circle Filled with Love. It was really a pretty cool record. And Keith was a real sweetie pie. I mean, I miss him too. He just passed away this last year. Keith said, you know, there's a couple of these songs you might want to put strings on. I said, yeah, I don't usually kind of lean toward it, but I realize it definitely ballads. You know, there's some ballads going on. And I realized what was happening. And I just basically, I said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And he took me over to David's house. He was living in an apartment over in Coldwater. And within a few minutes, we were like, whoa, there's some music going on here. And we just kind of became really fast friends in just a second. And next thing I know, I had him on strings. I had him play a little piano solo on one of the tunes. Had another tune for the next Sons album. I said, I don't have a bridge. You can come up with something. Boom, he hit the piano, came up with it. So I got him. So we just started co-writing and writing together. And I sort of became his vocal ringer for a good little while. And it was always a ball. When I moved to LA from Marin County, I ended up getting a house 2 doors down from David's. And when we did the album, we did it at the first album single, we did it at Davlin Studios, which was about 5 blocks away from both of us. So if I had an idea, I'd call him and say, dude, I want you to hear this. Sure, come on over. And I just walk 2 doors down, and like we were on it. It was like being in, you know, badass musical summer camp. It was really a fun thing. It was a great moment. And he had, you know, Ray Parker Jr. and his guys playing on the more R&B stuff. And he had the Toto rhythm section playing on the rest of it. So he put together a pretty good little thing. As he, you know, oh, yeah, he's not a producer. Bullshit. He's a total producer. It's really
Anyone
good.
who's watching this right now is imagining Bill Champlin just walking over to David. They're all there. He is. He's walking over.
Yeah, just popping down the thing, and I knew his daughter Amy, and I knew his sister James, and it was just, and you know, I was actually living there with my first wife, with Elaine and Brad and Amy. My kids were a little smaller in those days, and I mean, I had just a little bit of money, and I just knew Marin County was just, if you didn't sound like Jerry Garcia, you didn't exist.
Is that right?
And I was writing kind of a little more sophisticated stuff, and people in Marin County and Bay Area just didn't get it. Didn't get it at all. I went, you know, they were raised on bands with amplifiers that were basically skiffle bands, you know. and we came out of the James Brown, Jimmy Smith, and you know, Terry Haggerty was an amazing guitarist, but he was one of the first guys to really start using bop licks with preamp, you know, hard guitar sounding, but sort of something other than the pentatonic thing. So, I mean, that definitely put Hag on the map, and a lot of people started digging what was going on with the band.
Again, when in Rome, someone had asked, and it's a question I ask everyone anyway, but when you were 17, for instance, I'm kind of curious, and we're doing a whole series on this, and I'll include you. But one of your fans had asked me to ask you, what was in your record collection when you were 17? What's the stuff that you were really hooking on to?
My singing teacher was Lou Rawls. He didn't know it,
What?
but he was. He didn't know that he was my singing teacher. But it wasn't even so much my singing teacher, it was my phrasing teacher. Lou is so good at phrasing and so good at back phrasing things that it really taught me a lot, not so much about the licks that he was singing, but how he was singing them.
Bill, what's back? I mean, I'm a big fan of phrasing, and I feel ignorant to even ask this, but what's back phrasing mean?
Back phrasing means you're kind of you sound like, if you listen to one line, you're behind. You're behind it a little bit. But you know, if you listen to some of the records that really knock us out, you'll realize that the bass player is kind of in front and the drummer's kind of behind. And there's this, and the same thing can happen with singers. There's this thing. Now look at, for instance, D'Angelo. There's the classic back phraser. I mean, his stuff's way on the back end, and there's just something kind of cool about that. People say, wow, D'Angelo came up with a brand new thing. I'm going, listen to a Lou Rawls, you know, early Lou Rawls thing. But I mean, Tobacco Road and Black and Blue, and then Tell the Truth album, Ray Charles. I mean, I could never learn anything from Ray Charles except that dude's bad. You know, he was just as good a singer as it ever was. But Lou his style was something that I could actually define it and see kind of what it was. And then later on, we kind of became friends. I ended up working on one of his albums quite a bit later, you know.
Yeah.
It was funny. We were going to dinner with me, Jay Graydon, and Lou Rawls. Lou says, well, I don't, you know, I can't really get on the radio these days. I mean, believe me, I'm very grateful for what I have had. 23 albums at Capitol, and then Natural Man came out. And then after that was over with, you know, 10 years later, all the Philly International stuff. You'll never find all that stuff. He says, I shouldn't bitch. I shouldn't moan. I said, you know, Lou, just think, you know, David Bowie's really, really hot right now. And he's got the kind of same range as you. How about you will never find? He says, shut up, white people. I don't want to, you know, me and Graydon were, and he was such a complete comedian. I mean, we ended up, whenever we hung, we had a ball. He was a cool guy.
Living for Love. I'm hearing we're here for a limited time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, make it work. Tell me about that song.
Well, you pretty much just nailed it, you know. And I hadn't really done a blues. I mean, I started off as a blues singer, and really, for the most part, the only blues I've ever really recorded was In the Heat of the Night, which became that TV show. You know, the theme for this show of the same name, and it was originally put out by Ray Charles, and it was I think Quincy Jones and Marilyn Bergman wrote the song. When I started, all I wanted to do was blues, and somewhere along the line, music started to take me elsewhere. Especially when I got down here and started working. I mean, because when I got down here in kind of late 77, 78, that was when it was exploding here. You had Toto, you had Earth, Wind and Fire, you had Steely Dan. Everybody was going where the music was taking them. And was kind of the beginning of, I guess, what we call West Coast music, you know? I was really lucky I had been flying back and forth, working with Foster quite a bit on some other projects that he was doing. And when I got a record deal with Full Moon Epic for my first album, single album, and they said, well, let's get you with Joe Wissert. I said, Joe just did Boz's record. Let me go with David Foster. They said, oh, he's just a piano player. He'll never be a producer.
I heard you have said that Irving Azoff and among others were saying that they didn't see him as a producer.
They didn't really see him as a producer. And I said, you know, give it a minute. You'll blow your mind. And at some point in the game, he was one of the top producers in the whole world. You know, I mean, just, you know, came to the ball. He brought music to it. He brought, God, with those hands, Jesus, you can almost do anything. And there have been times, you know, most producers have kind of big moments, 2 or 3 albums that are going, then they hit a slump. And Foster, just like every other producer in the business, you know, hit a slump or 2 here and there, but I mean, his hands brought him right back. His musicianship, his ability to arrange when you co-write with David, everybody has a thing that they bring to the table. You know, mine's in a lot of ways is melodies, and I'm pretty good at fooling with English. You know, getting the lyrics to where they fit the melodies pretty well. And when Foster comes into the thing, he's not only is he a great player, but he's kind of a on the spot arranger. He's such a good arranger that, I mean, listen to Hard Habit to Break. That's David. That is the absolute best. It's still to this day. That's an amazing arrangement.
Yeah.
You know, and then when he added Jeremy in on strings, it was like, Jeremy Lubbock did the strings on that. It was just, forget about it. It's just ridiculous.